5 years ago, at the age of 19, I faced a life-altering challenge. My parents made the difficult decision to ask me to move out of our home. The reason? My older sister Nora, who was 25 at the time, became pregnant and needed to move back in with us. Despite having a job, she hadn't saved enough to support herself and her upcoming child independently. Things took an unexpected turn when Nora decided it would be best if her boyfriend, the father of her child, moved in with us for the baby's well-being. Our house wasn't particularly large, and accommodating everyone seemed like a stretch. I assumed our parents would object to Nora's boyfriend moving in, but to my surprise, they supported her request. They told me that since I was now an adult and taking a gap year instead of attending college, it was an appropriate time for me to start living independently. I was shocked and hurt, not understanding why my sister's needs trumped my right to stay in my home. I considered other living arrangements, like moving in with my grandparents or staying with friends, but the unfairness of the situation was overwhelming. I tried to argue, suggesting alternatives like sharing a room or having the boyfriend stay in the living room despite his back injury. However, my parents insisted on maintaining a more traditional home appearance and felt it was inappropriate for anyone to live in the communal spaces. Reluctantly, I moved out, feeling abandoned and betrayed by my family. The day I left, I couldn't hide my disappointment and anger, expressing my feelings of betrayal and declaring that I didn't want to see them again. I felt they had all acted selfishly, prioritizing Nora's desires over my well-being. Years passed, and I struggled to establish my independence, facing numerous challenges without the support of my family. Then, unexpectedly, my parents reached out again, asking for my help. Nora's situation had changed dramatically. Her boyfriend had left her, and she needed support. My parents, perhaps recognizing the hardship they had imposed on me, were now asking me to assist the sister who had indirectly caused my expulsion. This request forced me to reflect on family obligations, forgiveness, and what it means to support one another in times of need, despite past grievances. With only 3 days to organize my departure, I reached out to some friends to assist with my move. Initially, I considered staying with my maternal grandparents, but they were hesitant due to my grandfather's chronic illness and my grandmother's full plate caring for him. Understanding their situation, I turned to my paternal grandparents, who welcomed me warmly. Upon learning why I had to leave my parents' home, they were infuriated and expressed their disapproval openly, ultimately cutting off communication with my parents. During this tumultuous time, I felt a deep sense of betrayal and isolation. Despite the support of my grandparents and friends, I had always believed I had a strong bond with my parents and sister, so their actions left me confused and hurt. The situation became clearer the day after I moved out when I received a letter from Nora, delivered by one of her friends. In it, she explained that she had persuaded our parents to ask me to leave because she feared her boyfriend's flirtatious nature might lead to complications, given that their relationship had only solidified after she became pregnant. Nora's insecurity about her relationship to the extent of excluding me from our home seemed irrational and desperate. I felt disdain for her willingness to continue a relationship under such fragile conditions, but I refrained from confronting her, deciding that distancing myself from the situation was healthier for me. In the meantime, I was navigating my own path. I had taken a gap year after high school, not feeling particularly drawn to academia, but knowing I needed time to figure out my passions and goals. Music had always been a part of my life. I played both the guitar and drums, and had done so since I was 13. Throughout that year, it became clear to me that my passion was not just a hobby, but a potential career path. Despite the financial challenges of pursuing a career in music, I dedicated myself to becoming a music director. I started with small gigs, and although I relied on my grandparents' support initially, I gradually began to make a name for myself in the local music scene. My breakthrough came earlier this year when I successfully auditioned to play guitar on a few tracks for a film soundtrack, securing a handsome advance payment that allowed me to upgrade my living situation to a better apartment. My musical endeavors continued to gain momentum, promising more opportunities on the horizon. Only a select few knew about my burgeoning career, my close friends, and my grandparents. Yet somehow, word got back to my parents. They learned of my success and reached out, perhaps seeing me in a new light. Despite our strained relationship, this development hinted at a possible reconciliation, or at least an acknowledgement of my achievements on my own terms. I haven't shared any of this online yet, because the entertainment industry is never certain, and I didn't want to jinx anything. Despite my silence on social media, my family somehow discovered not only my recent success, but also where I lived. 2 days ago, they showed up at my doorstep, clearly in need. With both of my parents retired and my sister Nora struggling after her boyfriend left her and their child 2 years ago, they came to me for help. I was stunned when I saw them. I couldn't bring myself to invite them inside. They congratulated me on my achievements as acoustic and solo gigs for a film soundtrack and mentioned Nora's difficulties in maintaining the AT shop she started post-breakup. They weren't just here to reconcile, they needed my financial support. It was a lot to take in, especially since they had not been supportive when I needed them most. Their visit was ironic, given the past. I remembered the letter Nora sent me right after I was forced to move out, blaming her decision on her shaky relationship with her then-boyfriend. The irony of her now needing my help was not lost on me. I stepped back inside my home, leaving them outside, fetched the letter, and handed it to Nora, asking her to read it aloud to our parents. Nora, visibly embarrassed, refused to read the letter, so I read it myself. The contents revealed her insecurities and the manipulative decisions that led to my ousting. My parents listened, their expressions turning from shock to embarrassment as they realized they had been manipulated and had failed to see the truth. After reading the letter, the air was thick with tension. No one knew what to say. I told them plainly that their current predicament was of their own making, especially Nora's. She had gambled everything on a flawed relationship, disregarding our family in the process. Now, they were all facing the consequences. I concluded by making it clear that while we were technically still family, the bonds that mattered had been strained beyond simple repairs by their past actions. They needed to understand that their decision had long-lasting effects, and while I was not closing the door forever, reconciliation would require more than just an acknowledgement of my success. They needed to truly understand and rectify the hurts of the past. At that moment, I felt no duty to help Nora, and when I expressed that, she broke down in tears. She argued that she had expected more compassion from me, given that she acted out of love for her boyfriend and the desire to make their relationship work. She admitted she wasn't thinking clearly, driven by fear that her boyfriend might leave her and their child. Despite acknowledging her skewed judgment, she found it harsh and insensitive for me to blame her for her current predicament, saying she expected better from me. I was at a loss for words. Overwhelmed and frustrated, I shut the door on the conversation and on them, telling them to leave. Since that confrontation, I've been bombarded with messages from her friends accusing me of being cold-hearted and saying Nora hasn't stopped crying since our encounter. Now, I've decided I won't be apologizing for my stance. Reflecting on everything, it became clear that Nora's actions weren't just unreasonable. They were deeply unfair. The thought that her friends might sway me to apologize under the guise of insensitivity is misplaced. Nora needs to understand that there are consequences to her decisions and actions. And this time, I had to be the one to make that clear, especially after how her choices impacted my life. Of course, it wasn't just Nora at fault here. Our parents played a significant role. However, the entire ordeal could have been avoided if Nora had shown a bit more wisdom at the outset. I've worked incredibly hard to build my life and career, and I'm not about to financially support someone who has not shown the same level of responsibility or respect towards me. Nora still owns her tea shop, despite its struggles, and she has the opportunity to turn things around. There's no need for her to act as though she's utterly destitute. Both she and our parents often display a defeatist attitude whenever they face hardships, seemingly ready to give up rather than fight through challenges. This mindset goes way back. I remember in middle school when my dad lost his job during a company crisis, everyone in my family panicked. Instead of managing the situation with the savings they had, my parents immediately borrowed money from our grandparents, exacerbating the family's stress. I refuse to adopt that lack of resilience. My journey has taught me the value of perseverance and self-reliance, qualities that I've had to embrace fully due to the circumstances forced upon me. My current success is a product of my determination and effort, not something to be lightly shared with those who have not supported me when I needed it most. At the time, my dad lost his job, but it wasn't a dire situation since he found new work fairly quickly. Despite this, my family reacted dramatically, borrowing money from my grandparents. Oddly, they never repaid it, assuming perhaps it wasn't a big deal since it was just family they were borrowing from. Now, years later, it seems they're repeating history, this time with my sister Nora's struggling business. Unlike my grandparents, I feel no obligation to bail her out. She can handle her own issues or seek help elsewhere because I'm genuinely disinterested in getting involved. Last week, my family unexpectedly showed up at my place, and soon after, Nora's friends bombarded me with messages claiming I was insensitive and should apologize to her. I ignored these pleas. The past few days, I've been busy with gigs and work, managing my life independently of family drama. Just last night, after returning home late and exhausted, I received a call from an unknown number, which turned out to be my parents using a burner phone. They blindsided me with the news that they had decided to cut Nora out of their lives. This revelation was unexpected, and I was confused about their motives, especially since I had assumed Nora was the one in need, not them. I responded coldly, telling them that while they might see this as good news, it changed nothing for me. The way they had treated me in the past was unforgivable, and I had no interest in reconnecting or dealing with their issues. I've come to terms with our estrangement, and reintegrating them into my life isn't something I desire. As I attempted to end the call, my mother interjected, claiming they had done what I wanted by distancing themselves from Nora, suggesting this should compel me to support them. They completely misinterpreted my actions. I had never suggested or desired for them to sever ties with Nora to win back my favor. This was their own misreading of the situation. My parents became agitated, accusing me of misleading them. They revealed they had been financially supporting Nora and were now worried about their own retirement savings, expressing fear and regret about their financial future. They seemed to think that by cutting off Nora, they could rely on me as their backup plan. I had to set the record straight. I had not given them any such indications that I would step in financially. The decisions they made were their own, and they could not put the responsibility of their financial security on my shoulders. My refusal to help was firm, rooted in years of unresolved issues, and their repeated failure to support me when I needed them most. Their assumption that I would now provide for them was not only misguided, but also unfair. I truly don't understand what's going through my parents' minds, but their latest actions were so absurd that I ended up hanging up on them mid-conversation. They were trying to convince me to financially support them, but I couldn't listen to it anymore. I immediately blocked their number and decided to no longer accept calls from any unknown numbers. I'm even considering installing an app to help me identify and manage unrecognized calls. Right now, I'm just completely fed up with my family and want to minimize their ability to reach me. I've discussed this with my grandparents, and they fully support my decision to cut ties with my parents. They agreed that removing myself from this toxic situation is the best course of action. Ever since I opened the door to them that day, my personal life has been spiraling. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't answered the door. It would have spared me a lot of drama. They seem unable to leave me alone, continuously trying to intrude into my life. Something quite ironic happened today, 1 week after my last contact with my parents. Since I blocked them, they've tried to reach out only once via email. In that message, they bizarrely proposed cutting Nora out of their lives completely if and only if I promised to support them financially in the future. It's appalling and reveals their willingness to betray their own daughter for financial security. They're showing that they aren't loyal to anyone, not even their children. This morning, I was checking my emails and found one from Nora. She wrote in a very patronizing tone, claiming she was ready to forgive me for my harsh words, attributing them to bitterness and hatred. She boasted about being surrounded by supportive friends and family, implying that I was just jealous of her social network. What made me laugh was her ignorance of our parents' actual intentions. Without hesitation, I took a screenshot of the email from our parents, where they mentioned cutting her off for financial gain, and replied to Nora's email with that screenshot attached. It was important for her to see the true colors of the supportive family she claimed to have. This family dynamic is distorted by greed and manipulation. They see someone succeeding and immediately think of how to benefit from them. It's sad, really. If they pooled their resources and managed their finances sensibly, they'd likely have enough to live comfortably. Instead, they choose to create turmoil by manipulating their children for their own benefit. I'm just relieved to be distancing myself from all this chaos. Previously, it was my grandparents who were financially well off and wise with their wealth management. Now, it seems my parents view me in a similar light, since I'm currently doing better than my sister. It's clear that no one in my family really values each other. They only see what they can gain. Well, I've completely distanced myself from them, but I'm aware of the current chaos within their ranks. The message I sent Nora, which exposed our parents' willingness to cut her off if I agreed to financially support them, has caused a major rift. Nora, upset and feeling betrayed, aired her grievances on social media. She posted about how she never expected such betrayal from our parents, given their role in her life. While it's true that no child expects such behavior from their parents, the signs were there, especially after they so easily dismissed me. In response, my parents argued back publicly, accusing Nora of being a financial burden for years and stating that she can't rely on them forever. This has sparked a messy public dispute between them, which is not doing any favors for Nora's tea shop reputation. Meanwhile, my grandparents and I are merely observers to the unfolding drama. Despite my distance from the situation, I inadvertently played a role in bringing these issues to light. Thankfully, they've kept me out of their social media tirades, likely knowing that my involvement would only worsen their image. I have no interest in adding fuel to the fire or drawing attention to their spectacle. It seems they're desperate for sympathy. But so far, our extended family and others have kept their distance, put off by their behavior. For me, life is good right now, away from the family chaos. I'm focusing on my own path and enjoying the peace that comes with it. It's apparent that my family's actions are backfiring, yet they're oblivious to the negative impact they're having. I'm just glad I made the decision to stay out of it and keep my life drama-free.